Welcome to this tutorial. We're going to focus a lot now on the data analysis option, which is under the data ribbon all the way to the right of the screen. Now you've seen this table before and you've seen this data before. It's the data that we've used in the last two tutorials. I'm going to expand on this data a little bit because I want to make this a little more complex. That way you can see the power of the data analysis option here in Excel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to erase all of this. I'm going to start fresh and I'm going to go to data analysis. Now I could randomly put in some numbers, but it turns out here that the data analysis has a lot of different statistical tools. Take a moment here to just look at what's available. ANOVA, correlation, covariance, descriptive statistics, F-test, Fourier analysis, a histogram, and I'm going to focus on random number generation right now, and then go back to this section here in data analysis and perform some of these analyses. Now, Excel is not going to tell you which statistical tool you should use for your data. Hopefully, you have already decided what you're going to use in your planning of your project or in the methodology section. Or you're using a statistical book or the advice of someone who's a little knowledgeable about statistics so you know what test you're going to do. But Excel will give you some valid statistical results once you've chosen the correct statistical tool. So you need to know what tool you want to use. Excel will allow you to use it and use it rather quickly. So let's come up with a table of data. So we're going to do random number generation. Click that and hit OK. So the number of variables. So I'm going to make it complicated. This time I'm going to say that there are 10 variables and I want 10 numbers. In other words, I want a 10 by 10 table. My distribution will be normal. The mean I'm going to set as 10. We'll do a standard deviation of 5. And the output range, I'm going to select, well actually let's do it this way. Let's just do a new worksheet. That way we get something nice and clean. There you go. So here's my data. It should be a 10 by 10 table with a lot of different numbers based on excuse me, the parameters I had initially set. I'm going to move this data down a little bit so it's easier to see. Okay, and now I'm going to add some labels, some headers. There you go. And I'm going to call these variables. So just bear with me for a minute. All right. Now, before I move any further, let me just recap what I did. I made a 10 by 10 table of random numbers so that we can manipulate it and get some data. To do that, I started out with a blank worksheet like you see here. I went to the data analysis function, and in this box I looked for random number generation. This box is alphabetized. The tests are alphabetized. So I hit random number generation. I hit OK. I said I wanted a 10 by 10 table, 10 variables, 10 random numbers. I want the distribution to be normal, but I could choose any of these. I chose a mean of 10 and a standard deviation of 5, but I could have chosen anything I wanted. And I said put it excuse me, in a new worksheet. When I did that, we got this. Now I want to manipulate this data. The first thing I would recommend when you're going to do statistical analyses on data that's in Excel is to create a table that's sortable. That's just something that's a smart thing to do. It'll make your life easier, and if you do it up front, you only have to do it once and you'll never have to do it again throughout the entire process of using this data. So I'm going to go to the Insert tab, click on Table. Excel is smart. It's already picked my table for me. This is exactly my table. It already recognizes that my table has headers because it does. So I'm going to hit OK, and there's my table. There's my sortable table. So let's do some analyses. So say I'm looking at variable D and I want to get the average of all these values. It's a 10 by 10 table, which means I could put it into my calculator and manually get it, or I can go to data analysis and look for average. I don't see average here, so I'll go to my function and I'm going to type in what I want. Well, it's right there, average. Excellent. So I want the average of these numbers, and I want it to go right here. It's going to ask me what's my range. This is my range. And it already tells me that the average is going to be 10.2816256. So if I want that number posted here, there it is. There's the average for these numbers right here. And what's great is that this is a formula, which means if I change these numbers, for example, say I inputted the wrong number and instead of 5.73 this should be 0, take a look at what happens up here. The number changes automatically. And that's one of the best things excuse me, about these formulas. They're dynamic. They'll change as your data changes. That's exactly what you want. So let's undo that. So let me review this one more time. If you want a simple arithmetic calculation, like an average in this case, or the standard deviation, go to the function option right here. That'll give you something very simple. We chose average. Let's see if I have standard deviation. Well, it's not under my most recently used, so let me click here and let me see if I have statistical. And I'm going to look at some of these common tests used in statistics, see if I can get a standard deviation. I think I just saw it. There we go, standard deviation. Where's my range? Right here. Here's the standard deviation. I'd like you to place it right above the average. And there it is. And of course, that's a formula as well. So if I change this number, notice what happens to the average and the standard deviation. They both change, and that's exactly what we want. So in this tutorial, we're working on the function. In the next tutorial, we'll work on data analysis, which will give us a bit more in-depth look at the data that we have. Keep in mind that with the function option, you can choose a variety of statistical equations and or arithmetic equations. So say I wanted the Pearson's correlation coefficient. I click on that. The first array I'll choose as A. I want to correlate data in A with data in B. I already see that the R is going to be 0.464 or 0.464. So I'm going to hit OK. And notice that the data, that answer was placed right here. And that's not what I want. I don't want the answer in my data because it changes my standard deviation and my average. So I'm going to hit undo. And I'm going to move this box and put it up here. Then I'm going to go back to function. I'm going to look for Pearson. Here's the first set of data, or my array. Here's my second array. That's the coefficient. It's going to go right there. There's the formula. And there it is. Of course, if I change a number, watch this change, and that's exactly what you want. So if you've got these equations already set up on your table, all you can do is expand your table and add more data. And these numbers will change as you add more and more. So let's go back to the average here for a minute. We've got an average that goes all the way from the 16th row, 16, down to the 38th row. And that's great, because if I add more data, watch what happens to my average and my standard deviation. So as I add more data, I can get real-time analyses, statistical analyses of what I'm doing, and that's what I want, especially if I'm in a time crunch and I need to submit an abstract. I can get something put out rather quickly because this is all done automatically in real time. So that's it for the function section. In the next section, we'll talk about data analysis.